All right, how's everybody doing?
Good.
Okay. Last week, remember what did we talk about last week?
We came up with a new module, React.
React. Okay.
You did the interview on the police officer.
That's right. Did the interview on the police officer, this guy right here. And any strong points that stood out that he said that you say, I can make this applicable to my life. Anything that just kind of stood out.
He didn't give up. He just kept going.
Didn't give up, just kept going. Okay. And what were some key things when we talked about building a positive value system, and what were some key points? He gave some really good tips.
Well, like you said, he only had his mother basically, but she was still able to raise a man.
Right.
By the key values of integrity and things like that.
Okay. But what are some things that she did? Because he named some certain things. He explained some certain things that she did.
She never gave up on him, but when he didn't do what he's supposed to when he basically didn't do what he's supposed to do, and she said, I don't believe you no more. And I basically gave him an extra kick, like, I got to do it now. I can't keep on.
She said, I'm disappointed. And one thing he said was, it's kind of high risk. He says, parents sometimes need to be genuinely disappointed in their kids and let them know that. He said in some cases that kind of could be high risk. You got to follow with encouragement, of course. Yeah.
But he helped him because he knew she still loved him and everything. But
right.
She knew he could do better, and I gave him the motivation to go out there and do better. It made him a better person. And
that's what they say. Man, we talked about discipline without relationship equals what? Rebellion. Okay? So because he had that relationship with his mom had that relationship with him, that loving relationship, that discipline, right? It went a long way. So, and like I said, these are things that, we're not just talking about parenting. People say, well, this is just parenting. No, but when it really comes down to it, we got to police ourselves, right? That's what building a positive value system is all about. We got to learn to police ourselves in different areas, and we got to learn to parent ourselves, basically, right? Okay, and like I said, that's what we talked about, doing that introspection daily. Again, this morning, I'm at the park, and I'm not trying to just, boast like I'm perfect at this or anything like that, but I have to do it. I go out in the morning, hour and a half, and I just take a walk around the park, and, I sit still. Bless you. God bless you. And I sit still, and I just think about things, right? And I'm just saying, okay, I'll look at different challenges that I'm going through. Okay? And I just kind of just focus. First I'll pray, then I just be still. And I mean, literally, I was going through, they had this flower garden over in this park downtown. And I'll sniff the flowers. Because remember I told you, what does sniffing the flowers do? It has a chemical in it called linalool.
Make you feel better.
Yeah, well, linalool is a stress reliever.
They've been messing my allergies up the whole time.
For you like, hey, that ain't cool, huh? Okay. I think Simeon can feel you over there. Yeah. But like I said, even taking a citrus fruit, cutting it in half, and have it at your kitchen table or in your bedroom, and they say that alone, that smell, helps relax you. It's called aromatherapy. So there's things that, because a lot of times people are programmed just get up in the morning and just get on with their schedule. Boom, 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 boom. Everything's real fast. Turn on the music. Boom, 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 boom. And there's no really thinking or planning for that day. And then 10, 15, 20, 30 years passes by.
You're doing the same thing.
You're doing the same thing, and then you think back like, man, is this what I really wanted to do? How did I get here? Time just went by that fast. But like I said, we got to take control of our lives, control of our situations. Now, there are controllable factors, and there's what? Uncontrollable factors, correct? And then those uncontrollable factors, that's when you come up with your strategies. Because there's certain things we can control, certain things we can't control. Okay, we're going to talk about that. I was just thinking today when I was on my walk. I'm going to show you what I came up with. I want to ask this question. I used to ask this question a lot. Are you a thermometer or a thermostat? I got to ask myself that. Am I a thermometer or a thermostat?
Thermostat, it sets for different seasons. I'm a thermostat. I don't know.
Okay. Well, when life happens, basically, like I said, when life happens, right?
Nah.
Situations happen. Like I said, it gets, things start happening. People kind of move with the thermometer. They go, like, if everything's getting chaotic, they get chaotic, right? Things get cold, you get cold. Things get hot, you get hot. See, a thermostat, if it's hot, you go in there and you set the temperature, right? Today I walked into the house today. It was like 80-something degrees. I said, ooh, I went to my thermostat, set it at 76.
Kind of like in here.
Yeah.
Nice and cool,
Right.
Out there.
Yeah, I wasn't going to stress out. Oh, man, it's 80-something degrees. No, I could set the thermostat. I know how to set the thermostat. I'm skilled enough to set a thermostat, right? So I know within minutes I'm gonna feel that breeze coming out, and I'm gonna be all right. But see, in life, some people act like thermometers. Well, they yelled at me, so I yelled back at them.
And then go all the way to 100.
They cussed at me, I cussed back at them. Right?
I like that analogy. It's good.
Yeah.
Just set.
Yeah, we have to ask ourselves that, we got to have a thermostat mentality. And that's why we're bringing out these different types of tools. Okay? And, talking about developing a value system, the bear system, our beliefs dictate our emotions dictate our, actions, our actions dictate our results. See, we have to get an understanding of all these things, and then we come up with a plan. Here's another one. Let me go. Are you a climate setter or reactor? Basically. Are you setting the climate? Or you just react to it?
The reactor just don't do anything.
Well, you react. Yeah. Things happen. You just kind of, instead of like, okay, I'm going to set a positive climate. Right? Or you're just going to react to what's there. Well, hey, it was you hear people say, well, how'd you get caught in that? Well, my environment was really negative. And maybe they didn't have the tools to change it, but wherever I go, man, there was just gangs everywhere. There was this everywhere. Drugs were everywhere. Alcohol was everywhere. Right? Yeah. There were drugs and alcohol everywhere. So I just kind of fell into that. See, that's a reactor. Give me an example of somebody that's a setter, that sets things, sets the climate. You're in a drug-infested environment with alcohol and prostitutes and gang members, right? But you want to be a positive person. What can you do?
Get away from it.
Well, you can get away from it, or you got some people that what do? They build or create a nonprofit organization. They join the Boys and Girls Club. Maybe, hey, I'm going to be a mentor. Right? I'm going to get involved in the food ministry. I'm going to help out at the soup kitchen. You see? So, there's two ways you could look at things. That's a lot of times you look at gangster rap, a lot of the excuse is what? Well, they're just telling their story. Right? You shouldn't get on them. They're just telling their story. What they're experiencing. Well, the same thing, my house could be a mess, tore up, and I'm just rapping about how bad my house is and how horrific it is, how it smells, and, how kids are just running wild. Or I could rap about what I'm going to do to clean it up, or, what I'm going to do to turn this house around.
Nowadays, you will make no money saying
Exactly. You know,
But see, that's the same
a lot of
thing.
times you're right, and that's unfortunate because a lot of people say that. Well, you know,
They want to listen.
negativity sells.
It's the best thing right now. That's everything. Chief Keef, all the people.
Right.
All they doing is cussing and all that talking about guns, and people listen to that.
So
So
negativity sells.
So, but that's the same thing as people like glorifying, you know, not, you know, on rappers, but just people talking amongst people, glorifying their drug using days, their robberies,
Right.
all that, and it, you know, and I've noticed that people do
Mhm.
listen to that too. Like people, oh really? They could just be lying and just,
Yeah.
you know, they're just exaggerating. Like,
Right.
Oh really? Wow. You
Right,
know, and
right.
It's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. But why do you think negativity sells?
because everybody want to be cool, that makes everybody look cool.
But how did it become cool? Because that used to not be cool. I mean, I grew up in the days when that wasn't really cool, you know?
People are attracted to drama.
People are attracted to drama. You know, like, and that's probably why you have, what are those shows? Jerry Springer shows and Maury Povich shows and
Yeah.
Inside Edition where they're just talking about scandals and things like that. Yeah, it's like people get happy when
It's
you hear something
problems
negative.
are worse than mine, so it makes them.
There it is. Say that again. Say that again.
Other people's lives are worse than theirs, so it makes theirs not so miserable, and they can, you know,
Unfortunately,
not feel
that's
so bad about their own life.
you know that's unfortunately that's really true. A lot of times people like to hear negativity.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what's on the front page. You don't see, you know, a lot of positive things on the front page of a newspaper.
Yeah, a lot of people say that too. Like, I hate watching this. It's just so
Yeah.
bad. But
Well,
really,
yeah, the headlines, like, you know, out of 7 out of 9 out of 10 headlines,
Top story.
the top story
right.
is not going to be nothing usually positive, right? It's going to be negative. And people won't get addicted to, oh, God, I mean, they can't get enough. You know, they want to stay up late, you know, 3 or 4 hours later, catch the rerun of the news.
The news is kind of the only
Yeah.
place where I kind of disagree. Like, I mean, because I mean, the news is kind of for that. I feel like.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's the stuff that's not supposed to be happening. Like, if somebody's giving away $10 million in charity or something, or just doing good things, people are supposed to do good things, so it's not news.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? News is
Okay.
bad things.
Well, there's feel-good stories with news, but it's never the top story usually.
Right.
There's little.
But you don't think there should be a balance, like-
a little fluff here or there. You know,
Right.
It's 10 minutes into the newscast.
I mean, if a kidnapped girl is found or something, that's going to be top news. for
Yeah,
sure.
that's
That's
true.
good.
That's true.
That's good.
I mean, there is a balance, you know, and like I said, I mean, yeah, you got to report on the negative things too. I understand that, but like I said, but they know that a lot of the Fortune 500 companies, they want to pay during that time slot when there's real bad news. Why? Because they're gonna get more bang for the money. Yeah, and they, yeah, exactly. So
My friend's son, they had a candlelight for one of my friends that he was out there. He had did a little bit too much. He had overdosed on drugs. He had did Xannies, powder, and heroin, and sure he had overdosed. But they was having a candlelight for him, and some people that came through Vallejo and they were sitting at him Vallejo on 5th Street and shot his drove by and started shooting and shot his son.
oh
He was
wow.
only 7 years old, his only son. That messed him up, but it made the news and everything. But
Did his son, did he live?
I don't know. After
How long ago was that?
This is a few days ago.
Oh wow, that's sad.
That's
Yeah.
why I don't even go out there for that anymore. There's too much stuff going on. But that made the news. But that was something that people that I watch.
Yeah.
Something
Right.
like that happened.
I mean, of course, we got to be alert what's going on in the world. I mean, that's why, you know, a lot of times what calls us to action, right? I mean, look at Rwanda. What was going on in Rwanda? All these, you know, millions of people being slaughtered, and it got some people's attention, and they was able to go out there and provide some aid for that, right? Some help for that. So, and like I said, those are setters, right? They say, okay, we're going to reset. We're going to change the environment in this area. I mean, but it starts with ourselves, correct? It has to start with ourselves. And that's when that takes discipline. Let's go here. I'm going to play these clips. I got some pretty interesting clips I'm going to show you that I think we get some good conversation off. But remember, the first, you know, step in the React module is relax. Now, this has to be a lifestyle. This can't be something that, oh, I'm having a situation, let me relax now. I mean, like I said, you got to have a relaxed lifestyle. I don't mean a lazy lifestyle. You just lay up on the couch. But I'm talking about, what do I mean by relaxed lifestyle?
Like your thermostat, just set.
That's good, exactly.
You said you can't let people control you. You're going up and
Right.
down.
Your temperament.
Yeah.
Not to be stressed out.
Yeah,
Not to let things bother you and just relax with situations.
right. I mean, of course, things will catch you off guard. We're going to go up, but then you got to learn how to, just like in your house, when it gets too hot, you know how to reset it. You come down.
Check it real quick.
Right. Well, we can't just stay at a monotone level all our lives, right? So, yeah, but you have to have that built in you. And where does that start with? It starts with our
Thinking.
beliefs, yeah, with our thinking. How we look at different situations. And that's why it's so important, like I said, we find, I mean, not only just find the negative areas in our life, but we find the positive areas in our life and we backtrack, right? Why did I remain so cool in that situation? I'm real proud of myself how I remained cool in that situation. You got to tell yourself, what was my belief about that? I'm not going to sweat the small stuff, right? I'm looking at the big picture.
I had some times like that.
Yeah.
Since I've been doing good, I had some times when people, like before I would have reacted in a bad way.
Right.
Now I just took a deep breath and just thought about if I had more to risk than I did last before.
And see, that's self-talk. You see, that's a belief system. I have more to risk than what?
Than I had before.
Than I had before.
Yeah, so
See, that's implanted in your belief system. So that's going to dictate your behavior,
yeah.
right? So if you see some, kids loudmouth and disrespecting you, you can kind of be like, okay, I'm not going to let this deviate me off course. Because most people, they have a lot of potential, a lot of gifts, a lot of skill, great skill sets, but they get deviated off course just like that. You know people like that are just thermometers? I know a lot of brilliant people that are thermometers.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when I worked at Department of Corrections, you had the most brilliant people, a lot of times in the world. Some of the smartest people I've ever met in Department of Corrections. Real cool individuals, real sharp. But was their only downfall was their thermometers. They had a thermometer mentality.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that they just have a job because they use that badge a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them do be doing that.
No, you have some that do, and I've seen that.
They come to work and take their stress.
You know, and it's both ends because you're right because I've had to confront when I worked there some peers. I even had to go out and speak against them in situations, because of wrong behaviors. Because you're right, and it's nothing. And you have guards that are thermometers.
Yeah.
A lot of them. I know that. A lot of them. They come to work with a bad day. Oh man! But then you have some that are thermostats that are real cool. That when they're on shift, everybody feels good. People want to come out more and talk and feel comfortable.
Consistency.
Yeah, they feel comfortable. And then you got some that come to work and everybody, oh man, just take me down, Johnson. Dude's here. I'm going down, right? And I want to go down. Like, man, when you want to go home, you're like, man, I got to work with this person all day, But like I said, it starts with our belief system, and it's like that's something that they have certain fields, certain departments called quality control. Okay. And I remember my dad used to do that. He used to do quality control. And what they do is they look for and analyze for problems or potential problems in situations like a project. Let's say a light rail project, right? BART project. And that's their job, the quality control department. They're surveillance and looking for potential problems that nobody else could see. And why do you think they do that? Because a lot of times when a problem happens, it could be very costly, right? But if you could pay a little money for prevention, how many know that saves a lot of people a lot of money, a lot of lawsuits and things like that? But that's what we got to do for ourselves. Okay, I know I have an anger problem. If we know we have an anger problem, What are the beliefs, right, that, oftentimes result in my anger problem? Do I have a problem with women? Well, if I have a problem with women, where does that stem from?
Yeah.
Maybe, I've known individuals that hated women. Their mom abandoned them when they were a kid. Or their mom abused them when they were a kid. Or their mom watched them get abused when they were a kid.
Yeah, manifest.
Yeah, so it's different areas, and they never really thought about it, but then when they hear someone that, I remember one time I had a guy on my caseload, and this lady came in and reminded him of his mom, and man, this guy, every time this woman was there, and he would just react. Didn't find this out till later that this lady reminded him of his mom, but just the way she talked to him and all that, and she was a little abrasive, and he would just kind of just flip out.
Yeah, flip out.
Oh man, he'd just be like, and I said, bro, I think you just need to go down. Okay, and he knew he needed to go down, right? Because I'm like, I don't want to see you. You gonna get yourself in trouble. Okay.
So, are you familiar with the 12 steps and all that?
I've seen the 12 steps. I'm familiar with some of them.
Yeah, they touch on a lot of that.
Yeah. Right.
The nature of things like that, and then the 10th step is to do a personal inventory, like every night. See if you've harmed anybody and what went wrong. You know what I mean? And
yeah. See, quality and control, right? Or troubleshooting.
Yeah.
Okay. One might call it troubleshooting. But that's important because a lot of times people say, oh, I got this. And I got me a good job, good woman, good credit.
Yeah.
And I got everything. They get overconfident.
Yeah. Well, and
yeah.
The biggest thing.
It's the little things that they think that are little that will destroy.
Well, the biggest thing
everything.
In recovery, like for most of us that end up in trouble, there's usually addiction and alcohol issues.
Right.
So then you start with the biggest revelation is that you think that once you take the alcohol and the drugs away, everything will be fine.
Right.
But then you realize, hold on, I'm messed up inside. There's a reason why I'm turning to those.
There it is.
And
Yeah.
alcohol.
Right.
And I gotta get to the core of those.
They were just feeling that void.
So I feel good inside about being me.
Right. Yeah, the drugs are just using to fill void.
Right.
Nobody just, wakes up and say, I want to be a drug addict. I want to be an alcoholic.
But when you do the drug, the pain only goes away for a little bit. It's
Exactly.
Back.
Yeah.
You only can use so much.
But even that little bit for some people, they say that's enough.
Yeah.
If you give me 5 minutes,
relieve
me an hour of relief.
Yeah.
I'm willing to take the consequences for an hour relief.
Yeah.
And some people's reality is that bad to them.
Right.
Right? You got some people, I was talking to a relative not too long ago, suicidal. And it just, the torment of depression, sometimes it's like, man, even 10, 15 minutes, just give me an escape. You see? But a lot of times depression is linked to what? A pattern of beliefs. A lot of times looking at things in a negative way. People say, well, it's a chemical thing. Yes, it is a chemical thing, correct. But however, did you know that when you get in a pattern of thinking in a negative way, by default, it starts changing your serotonin levels. That's scientifically proven. Okay? If I start getting into a mode and I'm hanging around negative people, looking at negative things, listening to negative music,
You're going to be negative.
yeah, I'm going to be negative, and guess what? My brain chemistry is going to start changing. Now, how do you correct that? It's been proven also scientifically. If you start thinking positive, it changes your serotonin levels and balances them out. I've talked to a psychiatrist about this, a doctor about this, and they would say, well, first remedy for patients would be to get them thinking positive. But as we know, most don't want to think positive. They're not going to buy into that. So therefore, we give them medication with side effects. Right? It's not the remedy that I would choose for them, they say, but hey, it gives them the quick fix. Because some people don't want to do the work. Sometimes it's too harmful. Sometimes people feel like, what is there to think positive about? And some people's lives are, really in a pretty bad state. Now, there's always hope. I believe that. You know, in any situation, as long as you're still breathing, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, but doping somebody up all on medication,
Yeah.
I think that's really, they ain't gonna have no more brain cells. It's gonna be all. I don't think that medication don't do no good. I used to take medication,
Right.
and now that I don't take it, I'm a lot better.
You feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see, you like talking to you. You seem like a very positive person.
It should always make me
Yeah.
very drowsy.
But that took work. I guarantee you, it took some work on your behalf to become positive, right?
Yeah.
So you didn't just wake up one night and say, "I'm not taking it. I'm just going to be positive today." No, a lot of
It
time,
takes over time.
it's a process. Just like it takes a process to be negative. You know, it takes a process for somebody to become a hardened gang member. You don't just wake up and say, "I'm going to be a hardcore gang member." And no, you know, you have to go through this negative process to kind of detach yourself away from your conscience, right? And get in that process and you know, learn things and the street things and everything else, and you know, build that kind of negative confidence building by doing a lick and doing different criminal behavior. Then pretty soon it just becomes second nature. And you know, new gang members like, man, how can you just do that and have no fear? Well, it was a process. You know, now it takes process to unravel that. Because when someone would talk mess to me, you know, if somebody says, well, when I was once a hardcore gang member, somebody would talk mess to me, then I'd handle it right there. It's like, I had to go through the talking and, you know, trying to negotiate and things like that. I knew how to bring somebody, you know, that's not, you know, bring somebody in check. That's what they would say. But now that they're trying to go the legal route, right, the good citizen route, now it takes some skills to do that. And one of them is humbleness, right? That's one thing you got to have in your character, is to be humble. And what does being humble mean?
Basically having a state of mind.
Yeah,
Basically having a conscience, because if you don't, not reacting off of things so fast.
exactly. And you know, you got to be humble. That means admitting when we're wrong.
Because if you don't do that,
And that's not always easy to do. Especially maybe if you don't really care for the person and you might have done something wrong. You're like, ooh, you know what I'm saying? You know, yeah.
Being okay with being wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
I mean, some people it's easier to apologize than others.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna apologize to somebody that you know is a jerk and you might have slipped up and maybe was rude or off the bat, now it's like, yeah, you know that person's waiting for his apology, but you know they should really apologize to you, you know, because they've done so many things, but something in your conscience like, man, I gotta apologize at least for my wrong, right?
Yeah.
That a lot of times takes a lot of character building to be able to do that.
And to not expect them to
Yeah.
apologize back. Like
Yeah.
if they don't, like to not get butthurt about
Oh yeah, or then after you apologize, now they done 10 times more wrong. Now they're gonna lecture you after you done apologize.
it's basically just being a bigger person.
Yeah. Well, I'm proud you did that, and I was just thinking, but
it's about time you
next
did that.
time, let me just show you, you know. Ooh, you know, now it's like, man, you know. But like I said, there are times when we have to do that, right?
Yeah.
We have to do that. It could be a job, but just want to do that's what integrity is, right? And we talked about that. Doing the right thing when
Nobody's looking.
that's right, when nobody is looking. Okay? So relax is a state of mind. And a lot of times that comes from our belief process about just different things. Having a positive outlook on life. Okay? Having a positive look. You know, don't look at always, you know, I had learned not to look at problems as problems, but now I say, okay, it's a challenge. See, it's different. It's more, okay, it's not a problem, I have a challenge. Oh, I had a problem week. I had a pretty challenging week, but I think I'm going to get over it. I know I'm going to get over it. I'm learning some things from these challenges.
Opportunity.
Right. See, even wording things, right? You remember I told you before, you know, you have some people that say, man, I have to go to school. You got other people say, man, I get to go to school.
Yeah.
See, people come from third world countries. I get to go to school.
Cup half empty, right?
Yeah, the American kid, man, I have to go to school. I just want to stay back and play some video games. I have to go to school.
Yeah.
You see? It's all in our attitudes. And again, that comes from our association, who we're associating with. Association brings along similarities. So it's like, this is why it's like, man, we got to always, that's one thing, and I've always kind of been like that since I always observed things, evaluate things. Even when I was a kid, I didn't even trust a lot of people when I was a kid. Now I would just always look at people, and I always had that. It was like, no abuse or anything like that, but I always just analyzing people, just observing, and I would just watch people, and observe different behaviors. Maybe that's why I'm a journalist now. I'm always been observing. But that, it helps you a lot when you just sit back and observe. It helps you not be that gullible.
How much do you doubt on what people say? You talk about gullible.
Well, on doubt, a lot of times I'd have to say, I can be probably more skeptical than most people. Somebody tells me something, and I'll just watch them.
Yeah, it might not be your place to call them.
But I'm not going to say, you're a liar,
right.
Nothing like that. But I'm going to be like, I don't care if it's a pastor or a minister or anybody. I'm watching you.
Yeah, that's what I do a lot.
Yeah.
I think to myself, this guy's exaggerating.
Yeah.
Something.
There's certain things you could maybe pick up, and sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. Because there's times where I've maybe personally sized somebody up thinking they're a certain way, and they weren't like that, right? So I had to say, you know what? I'd admit to myself, probably humble myself, I was wrong about that person.
Yeah.
You see? And because maybe I've seen another prototype that looked just like him, right?
Right.
That did this, and this, and he looks just like that person.
He's acting just like
You're just acting just like them, laughing just like them. He's probably that person.
Right. Our past experiences will dictate.
But then sometimes we could be wrong, because I found out that person doesn't like that person.
Right.
And wow, okay.
That's our open-mindedness.
I got that wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like I said, we gotta give people the benefit of the doubt. At the same time, there's certain things we could kind of sum up pretty quickly, right? If you're going to have somebody come babysit, you put an ad for babysitting, and somebody comes with a blunt in their mouth, right? Kind of don't need to say, I shouldn't judge this person, really. Right. No, you better judge that, right? You better make a judgment, like I said, on behalf of your children, right? Yeah, I'm just going to take the kids for driving to the park. No, you ain't driving them nowhere, right? So, there's certain things that are just common sense. But the next one is, evaluate the situation and focus. And again, this got to be something that we got to build in before the situation happens and evaluate the situation. And we got to, like I said, this is when resources come in. A lot of times I read about things. And I'll do research on different types of things, and it really helps out at the end. Just whether it's about parenting, I like to read books, success stories, and things like that. Gather information. So when you're evaluating, it's helpful if you have a lot of knowledge, right? That you could kind of assess the situation. The more knowledge you have about a situation, the more you could assess it. Okay. Just for example. You're dealing with somebody. Give me an example of maybe a situation that you're going to need to evaluate using the REACT module. How about teenagers? You have a teenager that is mouthing off, right? And her behavior is erratic, up and down, right? You might want to find out a little bit about teenagers.
Yeah. Right?
Maybe read a book on somebody that, somebody recommended, a pastor or a counselor recommended. Find out, especially with female teenagers, girls, they go through these different episodes. They could be on their period or something like that, or when they act this type of behavior, there could be some drugs involved. What are their friends? Look at their friends, right? I teach parenting classes, and I tell people, hey, you got to look at their friends. Was there a different change of their friends? Did they drop a certain amount of friends and get around other friends? Something like, my kids what colors are they wearing? Well, they like to wear the blue all the time, or they like to wear the red all the time. Okay? All their friends have 49er gear on. They just love the 49ers. Well,
Yeah.
Maybe not. That could be, you know what I'm saying? That could be your child's involved in a gang. Right? But you have parents that they have no knowledge of that. They could have moved from Nebraska or from somewhere else, and they just arrived in California, and they started saying, oh, well, I guess 49ers are just up the street. I could see that when I was a kid. I lived in Buffalo, and I wore my Buffalo, New York stuff. So they're thinking according to those thought patterns, right? But if you got information, you can assess the situation. So a lot of times, even before we react, gather some information. I mean, a lot of times Google's my best friend. You find good things on Google, you said bad things. You got to make an evaluation. There's some good things. There's some things that aren't so credible on Google, right? But there are some credible things out there. Resources, people you can call. So you can find everything you can. Maybe you can watch some YouTube videos on a conference of somebody talking about teenagers, right? How to deal with teenagers. See, now you're equipped. Now you got more information at your hands. Now you can do a better evaluation, a better assessment, right, of the situation. You see how that works? I mean, it can be anything. I remember having somebody told me to read this book on How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And somebody said, you know what, if you're having a problem with your boss, they have a good chapter on that in there. And I remember I was having a problem with a boss and had some good information in that book that really worked. And then that information, right, led to some more information, some like-minded people he recommended. See, read those books. And a lot of these books had biblical principles in it. And I said, man, that's a simple technique, but man, that works.
Right now, a book by him on not stressing on, I can't remember the name of the book, but not stressing on yesterday or tomorrow and just focusing on today.
There you go.
Have you heard of that book?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
See?
yeah.
But I probably want to hear that. Yeah. See, I'm just talking about that, and you got somebody right there just loading himself up on some positive information. And I guarantee you, when like I said, whether you're doing a business or on a job and you're having a conflict with an employee or an employer, you're going to be able to draw from that. Am I right?
Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah.
See? And you got some people that don't prepare, don't do any type of research. And, the Bible, that gives me good information to be able to evaluate things. Also, that's a book that I use. Okay? Or you find somebody that's wiser than you, and then you talk to them about the situation. Yeah. I'm always looking for people that are wiser than me about another situation, right? And I get that information. And guess what? They have other resources I can go to. See, I got a support group. I have problems. Today I was sharing with a good friend of mine, a very wise friend of mine, a pastor of mine. I said, I'm going through this situation. It gives me advice, right? Pray. But see, now I got more information to assess the situation and take action. You see? So a lot of times people just try to they don't do anything. They don't take time to invest in their personal development. That's what we got to do. We got to invest in our personal development. Reading books, talking to people, going on YouTube, watching videos, taking notes. I do a lot of that. A lot of times I'll search through YouTube on certain things and find some teachers that got some credibility in just different areas, whether it's business, whether it's spiritual, whether it's psychology or whatever. And I just, even if I don't agree with the person, I want to know how that person thinks, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people I listen to that I 180 degree different perspective, but I know I'm going to be dealing with people like that, so I want to know exactly how they think.
Right.
You see, that helps me. So when somebody's talking like that, I understand where you get that. You get that from this. Well, how'd you know that?
Yeah, it's important to understand, I deal with what you're talking about with different religions,
right?
Understanding different doctrines and the way they believe. Don't be ignorant about it. Go in and study and learn about it so you can have intelligent conversation with that person about their beliefs and understand where they're coming from.
That's a good
You
point.
may not agree with, like what you were saying, you may not agree with that speaker,
Right.
but you're getting information so you can understand.
So you're getting intel. You're getting intel.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not calling them the enemy, but I mean, isn't that what they do in war, right? They send out spies to get intel
'Cause you have no
on
right,
what the enemy's doing, how they attack.
right, you have no right even opening your
Right.
mouth if you don't
Yeah.
know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
I've had discussions with people who are in the Islamic faith.
Yeah.
So you gotta understand
Right.
a little bit about their understanding of the beliefs and whatnot, so you can have a
And they respect you more.
respectful conversation
Yeah.
back and forth, and not just fighting words.
Yeah.
Have-
Well, you're wrong. Well, how do you know I'm wrong? You know, like I said, I remember when I was working at Department of Corrections, they kept putting, maybe because I was a Christian, they kept putting Satanists on my caseload, right? I was getting all these Satanists. So instead of being like, man, why are you putting all these Satanists on my caseload? I would sit down and have long conversations with them.
What do you mean by that?
Unjudgmental. Like, you know, I would just be like, you know, well, what led you to become a Satanist?
There was people in there that believed in.
Oh, Satan, yeah, a lot of Satanists. You know, I'd get some. I mean, we had some real hardcore ones too. Ones that actually one was involved in cannibalism, and I would just be talking to them, and I'd be like, you know, not looking shocked, but just like I'm talking to somebody about, you know, photography. Well, what led you into that, really? And then as they see you listening, they would be opening up, and then, well, how do you feel about that? Well, I don't always feel good about it, you know, but I feel like I'm locked into it. But what led you? Well, we had a pastor that I found out was a hypocrite, and I got mad at the church, so I kind of flipped the script and got in Satanism as a rebellion or something. You start learning things, and guess what? I find out most Satanists were one-time Christians. Not all of them, but many of them were. And I would ask them, well, were you hurt in the church or something? Did somebody? Yeah. A lot of times you'll find that.
They say to really hate somebody, you have to love them first.
Yeah. It says so. You would find that, but then when I'm talking to another Satanist, and I'm like, well, do you do this because of this? Were you involved in it? Yeah. You know, and now they're more open to hear from you. And some of them look at me like amazed, like, how did you know that? Right? And then I would go get the information that I got, and I could dispel these beliefs and show them, hey, this is what this is really going on with you. And they would be more open to listen to what I had to say. Right? And some of you convert them. I've actually, been able to convert them, away from that. Right? And not forcefully. I'd give them information just to think about. Well, I remember one I do all the time, because a lot of Satanists believe in the Bible, right? They're just against it. So I say, Satan's the father of lies. They like, yeah, he's the father of lies. I'm like, okay, so you're made in God's image, right? Yeah, I'm made in God's image. I said, God, Satan hates God, right? Yeah, but you're made in his image. So when he looks at you, doesn't see God? Well, yeah, and they start thinking. I'm like, well, might be trying to plan to really get back, because he can't hit God directly. He tries to hit his kids, right? So he might be trying to use you to work for him, and then lying to you, saying that you're going to rule on earth with him during Armageddon and everything else like that, or in hell, just to deceive you, because he is the father of lies. And I would just leave it like that, and they'd be looking at me like, I said, he's the father of lies, so why all of a sudden you can have integrity in him now? Would you have integrity in somebody called the father of lies? Is that wise? I'm just asking. They look at me like, they just get real quiet. Well, he is. I said, but he's a liar, right? You just said that.
People switch back.
Yeah. He told you this. He told you this, right? You're gonna be like, well, yeah, but you trust a liar? And see, that right there, you can plant thoughts in their head just by their own information, because I had the information. You see, and it makes them start evaluating themselves, right? Because a lot of times, what they would say, even in the Dale Carnegie book, right? They say a lot of times, if you want, like say, you're trying to present an idea to your boss, a lot of times you present it to them, but make them almost feel like it's their idea too.
Mm-hmm.
See, if they think, sometimes you have a lot of bosses that are arrogant. So if you come up with an idea, it could be the best idea in the world, but they don't want to do it because their pride don't want to give you credit. But if you put out the idea, then ask them for suggestions. Oh, that's a good suggestion. You kind of, yeah. Well, what do you think? I don't know. Do you think this will work? Yeah, I think it'll work. We're going to implement this. You see, now they're
working with them.
Yeah. See, now they feel like it's a partner team, or it was their idea. Now it's going to benefit everybody else. You see, that's something that they taught at the Dale Carnegie book, and now it's like, man, now they're looking at this is the guy that has all the good ideas. Now they might tell other people, that you came up with that invention or that system, or they might not. But hey, irregardless, a lot of times they're gonna keep you around, and they might promote you, right? Because you're the go-to person now. So that's evaluate. Now, we're gonna go through these three, then we're gonna take a break, then we're gonna play the clip. Is that okay? I'll go through these last ones real quick. A is apply options and strategies within a positive value system to the scenario. So, like I said, we're relaxed, we're evaluating, we got the information. Okay, now at this time, we're going to apply the options and the strategies from what we evaluated. And these are strategies that we have, right? That we, like I said, got maybe from, reading books, from the BEAR system, like I said, as from our value system, basically, right? Because our value system is basically where our options and strategies lie. How we're going to deal with things. So, like, for example, my belief is, and I get this from Proverbs, a wise man overlooks an insult. A fool is annoyed at once. So if someone insults me, right, what is my option? It's according to my positive value system. I'm going to overlook it. Keep walking, right? Because you have a belief system. What was your belief system? You say, I have too much. What did you just say earlier?
Too much to risk.
I have too much to risk. See, that's in combination. I'll add that to my value system too. I got too much to risk. A wise man, I want to be a wise man, and I got too much to risk. See, that's my belief process.
A foolish man don't got nothing to risk.
There it is.
That's why we be foolish.
So we're wise, right? I mean, you've got the same belief system in that way. So when somebody starts talking crazy to us, you got a good job now. So he's like, I'm not going to risk that to prove what? And another one is what? I don't let other people define who I am. That's my belief system, right? So these are belief systems. See how the positive value system are the options. Those are the strategies. Come from our beliefs. It's not always, I got to count to 10. I got, to relax, got to do this and that. No, if you got the value system implanted there, and it is, like I said, and it's a daily practice,
it'll work.
It's going to work. And then the next C is, consider the pros and cons. And this is where you kind of still troubleshoot. Like I say, you quality control, okay? Let me weigh the pros and the cons of these options and strategies I'm about to do, okay? And you might need to tweak them a little bit, right? You might need to tweak them a little bit in certain situations, okay? Like I said, I might be a Christian. I'm coming with this scripture, but we're in a school setting. I can't do that, right? So I'm going to have to maybe word my complaint or my rebuttal differently, right? That fits within the guidelines of the system, right? That I'm putting forth my rebuttal or my complaint. I got to use wisdom. So I'm weighing the pros and cons of the situation. I'm checking it out. Remember, I'm visualizing. This is where your visualizing happens. Okay? I'm visualizing the different turnouts from this situation. I'm weighing it out. And then the T is you just, like I said, you move on it. You take action. Then you debrief afterwards. How did everything go? Then sometimes we got to tweak it.
Sometimes it always goes.
Yeah, no, sometimes it doesn't always go perfectly. A lot of times it doesn't go perfectly, but then we can learn from that. But, this part went good. But next time I'm not going to do this. Right? So basically, like I said, we relax. We evaluate the situation, with the information given to us. Get prepared to apply the options and strategies which come from our belief system. Right? And then, like I said, we visualize that within our mind, and we do the pros and cons thing again. You know, the troubleshooting. You know, pre-troubleshooting, visualization. Okay, how is this going to turn out? You know, what are the pros and cons of this situation? Just high risk. Just like, for example, when that mom told the police officer, her son, right? She said, "I'm disappointed in you." Well, you know, I'm sure she was weighing the pros and cons of that. Okay? He might just rebel and feel like totally rejected if I do that. Or it might hit his conscience.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So then she took action. So that's the nutshell. I'm going to go on to a video I'm going to play where, you know, I have an individual that, this is another guy who was one of the founders of the, well, no, actually, what we're going to do is we're going to go with my friend Michael T. He's a former white supremacist.
I was going to ask you what we were going to do in the
Yeah.
people that you interviewed.
Yeah, this guy, he's a former white supremacist, Michael T., has a great story. I mean, he talks about the whole process, what led him, you know, into becoming a white supremacist.
Was he high ranking or something?
Oh, he was high ranking. He's at San Quentin. Yeah, he was real high ranking. And deep story, though, deep story. So we'll play that when we return. Then the next video after that is an individual named Big D. He passed away. I interviewed him before he passed away, but he was one of the original founders of the Mexican Mafia. And he has a deep story. You know, he's talking about he's about to kill somebody in the county jail, and he's actually using the React module. And you'll see how that works out. All right?
That's not enough for me. No, don't call me Jesus only. That's not enough for me. He's my Alpha, my Omega. So call me Jesus everything.
I was a fool for the devil. I want to be a fool for Christ. Amen. 'Cause I am redeemed, Lord, I'm always the price. You know that Jesus has changed Brendan's life. Now if anybody, if they ask you, I'll just who I am. Won't you tell them that I am redeemed? I am redeemed. Lord, I'm only the price. And Jesus has changed my whole life. Anybody, they ask you, I'll just who I am. You tell them, Lord, that I am redeemed.
Yeah, we just wanted to you just to tell our viewership just a little bit about your upbringing. What led you into the prison gang that you were into, and then what led you to your relationship with Jesus Christ?
Okay. I was raised up a young Baptist boy. Went to church till I was about 12 years old. At 10 years old, at a Baptist Bible camp, summer camp, God called me into ministry, called me to be a preacher, and I went to the pastor that night. I remember around the campfire, and I said, God called me to preach. Everybody was happy, praying for me, laying hands on me. And about 2 years after that, I was in church regularly. I was a good kid, never got in trouble, didn't have any inclination towards that type of lifestyle. And on my way to church one Thursday night for visitation, I stopped to get a soda, and there were these older guys that I knew from school, kind of like, older tough guys, that they weren't church kind of guys, and they were standing about a half a block away. I went over and started talking to them, just kind of talking, and a car pulls up, a 44 sedan pulls up, and they all piled in, and I jumped in with them. Well, I didn't know the car was stolen. And then we take off, and the cops are after us, and finally we run out of road. It was a long chase, and we run out of road, and everybody jumps out and runs. I don't know to jump out and run. I sat there. And by the time I figured out I need to jump out and run, I didn't run into the arms of the cops. They arrested me, took me downtown. I told them I had been kidnapped. After interviewing, grilling me for an hour or so, they let me go. But I never went back to church. And the next day at school, when I went to school, they were all, high-fiving me, patting me on the back and pulling me in. And I liked the attention. I liked the camaraderie. And so I never went back to church. And I started looking at people that go to church as lames and sissies and just, uncool. Well, with that, it wasn't long I started doing drugs, sniffing glue, doing the pot, doing the res, doing the acid. Pretty soon I started shooting heroin. It wasn't long after I got addicted to heroin that I picked up a gun, started doing robberies. A lot of time getting arrested, juvenile hall, go YA, went to some youth things, went through some youth prison deals, and then my last time I was in juvenile hall, they took me from juvenile hall to adult jail, and from the adult jail I started compounding crimes. I wasn't out, I was in and out. I started compounding crimes. I ended up in San Quentin, 1972. In San Quentin, in those days, the prison system was a little different than it is today, and a lot of violence, a lot of racial tension, a lot of rocking and rolling, a lot of violence, very violent. And where I grew up, it was if you went to San Quentin and you came out a man, without being violated, and you came out alive, it was like in a normal neighborhood in a normal society, graduating from Stanford University with a PhD or something. I mean, you got that kind of respect, that kind of thing, and you ran with that, and what happened to me is I began to believe a lie, I believed a lie I was born to lose, and I grew up without a father. I grew up without any correction, without anybody to steer me back in the right direction. When I was starting to get out of line, I didn't have anybody to pull me back, and I just continued to go further out and further out and further out. I joined a gang at a young age in prison, and what that did was it actually made me do a lot of other things that have to go along with that process.
The gangs in prison were really racial.
Very racial, yeah, very racial at that time. And what happens is in retrospect, I can tell you now what happens is when you do that, you think you gain an identity, but you actually lose your identity, and you lose the ability to make choices for yourself, And you gotta go along with the choices that they make as a whole, and just a lot of stuff. And Ray, I tell you, I was a coward, but I didn't know it. I was so much of a coward that I would have stabbed you or hurt you to prove I wasn't a coward, but I was doing it out of fear. This is in retrospect. I'm looking back now as a young man. I was doing this all out of fear and bred into hate and all these things. And what happened was, when I got out of prison in '76, after compounding 6 months to 7.5 years into almost 7.5 years, I decided when I got out, I said, I'm going to change my life. I'm not going to go back to the pen no more. Moved to LA, went to LA and tried to get a job. Didn't work. Started shooting heroin, started doing robberies. I did a crime spree up to Northern California. Up there, I met a bunch of guys that cook crank. And so I got involved with them. I pistol loaded for them, protected the lab. We were turning 10, 15, sometimes 20 pounds of raw crank a week. Now, I wasn't into crank. I was shooting heroin. I was a heroin addict and doing heroin. And I thought I had it going on, motorcycles and money and motorhomes and girls and all the stuff that go along with that lifestyle. But in reality, I had a big hole in my heart, And I didn't know how to fill it. I tried to fill it with heroin. I tried to fill it with power. I tried to fill it with drugs, alcohol. I tried to fill it with illicit sex. I tried to fill it with things, motorcycles and motorhomes and the stuff that you acquire through drug deals and all this stuff. And it didn't work. And so at one point in time, I said a little prayer. I said, God, help me. And about 3 days later, I got popped. And when I got popped, I'd already been busted about 5 times for extra possession of a firearm. But I kept bailing out because I kept getting busted on other people's names. Different name. And the same thing when I got busted this time, it was under an alias. But when I got to jail and they booked me into the jail, they booked me in under an alias, and they started putting me in this ex-con dorm with all these ex-convicts and lock up. So when I walked in the door, somebody said, hey, Michael T just came in over the phone. And the cops heard it, and so about 3 minutes later, they were in there, they pulled me out, put me in the hole. When I'm in the hole, I go in, and there was a piece of a Bible from Acts 10 to Revelations laying on the bed. And under the toilet, there was another book, and I pulled it out. It was called Where Flies Don't Land by a guy named Jerry Graham. And so I threw those books in the corner. I knew when I kicked this heroin habit, I wanted to read. I was an avid reader. I wanted something to read, and it's hard to get things in the hole. So I laid down, and about 4 days later, I'm feeling better. I kicked this habit, and I pick up the Bible, and I tried to read it, but I really couldn't understand it. It was King James, and it was just really hard for me to understand. So I read this book, Where Flies Don't Land by Jerry Graham. And as I read this book about a guy that did 18 and a half years of his life in prison, heroin addict, maniac, and just state raised, the whole process, I read about my life on this book. I read about things that had, my entire life on this book. But I read it in the back of the book. I read where this guy had given his life to Jesus Christ, and then for the past 20 years before I read this book, he got saved. And for the past 20 years, he'd been giving back. He'd been going to the prisons. He'd been doing child's ranches and helping kids and preaching and going places and giving back and changing lives. And for 20 years, he'd been doing this, and it worked. And so I thought to myself, if God can help this guy, he can help me. If God could help a fool like this, he could help a fool like me. Yeah, it gave me hope, and it broke down the barriers. And so I said a little prayer. I said, Lord, I'm ready to serve you. I'll be your guy. Now I'm ready to go. No more dope, no more violence, no more this and that. And I said, you can let me go now. Well, praise God, it didn't work. He didn't let me go. But about 2 weeks after that prayer, they came and they found out my real name, and they took me out of the hole. They put me back in the compound with all the ex-convicts that had been to prison before. And when I walked in the door, they handed me a knife and they handed me a bag of dope. And I gave the knife back, but I didn't give the dope back. And I shot the dope, got high. All good intentions went out the window. With that, the next morning, I'm sitting on the edge of this bunk, and I'm waiting for the chow bell to ring, and a young kid about 18 walks in front of me. I see him walking there, and something tells me inside, that's how you act. And I thought, man, that's how I act. I'm 39 years old at the time. There's something wrong with this picture. If that's how I act, there's something wrong with this. So I took my mattress, I rolled it up. I had a single-edged hardback razor blade in my mattress. I rolled it up, and I told the man, I pushed the squawk button. I told the man, put me back in the hole or I'm going to stab somebody. So they put me back in the hole. My thought process was that from 12 o'clock at night until 5 in the morning, there'd be no cops walking around. I'd have 5 hours of freedom. So I got there at 7 in the morning. I sat there from 7 in the morning, lay on my bunk from 7 in the morning till 9 at night, weighing in the balance of my mind, pros and cons, if I should or shouldn't kill myself. My intention was to take that single-edged razor blade, and at 12 o'clock that night when the man made his last count, I had 5 hours. I was going to take my mattress, cut it up into strips, braid it into a rope, and hang myself. But at 9 o'clock that night, I'm sitting there, and the guy turns the television on in the foyer, the guy in the next cell over, turns the television on, and a guy named David Paul out of Houston, Texas comes on and starts talking about Jesus. Somehow God was dealing with my heart, but I didn't understand and didn't know how God was. I didn't believe in God. I didn't even know there was a God. I'd said a few prayers, and I thought it was just a slot machine little game you played. But as he began to speak about Christ, and he began to speak about the nail-scarred hand of Jesus and the blood of Jesus, and that if I would grab hold of the nail-scarred hand of Jesus Christ, God would forgive me for my past, and he would take me to that place God originally intended for me to be before I walked away. And he would give me back what I had lost. He would take the things that I had done and wash them away, and I could be what God wanted me to be. And as this guy spoke, it broke my heart. And I sat there on the edge of my bed, and I cried, and I wept, and finally I fell on my face on that floor, and I cried, and I said, God, if you're real, and if you're who that guy says you are on television, if you're who that guy says you are, and if you can do what that guy on television says you can do, you do it for me and I'll live for you. But I don't know how to not be good. I don't know how to not lie, cheat, steal, stab people, rob, and just do all the stuff that I've been doing all my life. I don't know how not to. I said, but if you'll take it from me, Lord, I'll live for you. That was June 20th, 1989. And I'd like to say the next morning I woke up and everything was roses. It wasn't. I woke up, they were trying to give me the Habitual Criminal Act. I woke up and I still had the problems that I had. I woke up, I still had problems when I got to the pen for dropping out. I was going to become a pincushion. I had problems. I had enemies. I had all these things. And I realized that everything I'd believed was a lie. Everything I'd lived for was a lie. Everything I'd done was a lie. But as I began to read the Bible, I began to read the Word every day. And as I read the Word, I saw that everybody in that book except Jesus Christ was a failure before God used them. They had all failed first. And I realized the first guy to ever go to heaven was a thief hanging on the cross. He was a convict. And I knew that God loved convicts. And I realized, as I read, I saw that every apostle had become a convict. And every apostle was used by God, but they were a failure before they were used. And so God took my failure and my stepping stone, my stumbling blocks, and through the Word and through prayer and through time, he turned my stumbling blocks into stepping stones. then I went to prison. I went to Bible college, and I walked the next 7 years walking with the Lord. That people told me I should lock up. I wouldn't lock up because I was trusting God, and if I locked up, I wouldn't be trusting God.
So how had that trust in God, how did you obtain that? Because that's a real big thing.
Through
a lot
prayer.
Of people say, I'm going to change once I get out of prison.
Right.
And you sat there, in the prison, in a tough prison, and you walked the line. How did you obtain that type of courage to do that?
Prayer and just reading the Word, trusting God. I was scared. I'll be honest with you, I was scared. I wanted to lock up, but something in my heart just told me that to trust God, just trust God. And every day I'd wake up and the enemy would tell me, this is the day, this is the day you're going to get took out, this is the day. And I walked a little bit in fear, but I prayed and I just trusted God. I'd write a new scripture on my hand every day. I'd learn a new scripture every day. I'd read the Word, I'd pray, and so then when the 7 years went by, there were times that I thought, it was over, but, it was just by the grace of God that I sat here today, amen. He gets all the glory. It's all about God.
What really amazes me is we were in Oroville a few months ago, and you have a very successful drug program, substance abuse program out there.
Yes.
And I was talking to a young man who said that you went to Illinois, outskirts of Chicago.
Yes.
And I guess on a crusade.
Yes.
And you witnessed to him, and he was a black gangster disciple.
Yes.
His gang member.
Right.
And here you are from a white
racial gang. Right.
And yet you witnessed to him. And I guess from there, I
brought him back to California,
and encouraged him to come back to Oroville, California with you, where he is today.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that this week?
Yeah, I went to Chicago, Aurora, Illinois. It's the outskirts of Chicago for a crusade, and I was invited back there. So as we started this crusade, people started getting saved. At the park, I'm talking to this guy. His name is Keith Gibson. I led him to the Lord. Black brother. But see, here's the thing. When I got saved, bro, I got colorblind. I don't see the color no more. All I see is red, the red blood of Jesus. God broke all that off me. So as I witnessed to him, and there was like 5 other dudes I brought back that were black, and 2 white guys I brought back from Illinois. And the 2 of the brothers made it. The 2 brothers made it. Lawrence and Keith made it, and the rest kind of fell away.
And he considers you his spiritual father.
I am his father.
We have footage of him.
I'm his father in the Lord, baby. That's right.
Ministry.
That's a good story. I came in contact with Jordan Carlson Ministry in 2003. I was on the streets of Chicago. I was homeless. I was an ex-gang member, Gangster Disciples, and I was hanging out at a park. And Jordan Carlson Ministries came to Aurora, Illinois, which is about 20 minutes from Chicago, and they were doing like a Jesus in the Park type thing. They came in, they was doing a thing at this Christian school, and it was just like a little revival type thing. And a guy named, I never forget his name, Richard Todd. He was from Kansas, 71-year-old man, and he came to this park where we're hanging out. Everybody's hanging out, and and just drinking and smoking dope, and this area was a real bad area. And Pastor brought some guys from California. Never met them. And when we seen these guys coming, we thought they were like Vicks. We got some Vicks coming because
What is Vic?
a Vic somebody that you could trick and get over on. Asking for money, con and scheme them or stuff like that. So we seen like, oh, okay, these guys y'all from California? Okay, well, welcome to Illinois, And so these guys came and they was talking about Jesus and like that, which I grew up in the church. I was born in Illinois, but my mom was from Mississippi. My mom been singing gospel for 40 years. And my whole family grew up in the church. My great grandmother played piano for me, and when I was a little kid, so I knew all about Jesus and stuff like that. But I had just had to do my own way, go my own route. You know what I'm saying? And in the process of that, Richard kept coming at me about, you need to come on, go to church. You could be able to take a shower. You be able to, get you some food in your belly and stuff like that. And at the time with me, I was homeless, but I wasn't dirty. You know what I'm saying? I had a proper change of clothes, stuff like that. I was just hanging out, being me. Make the long story short, I went to that Thursday night. I'll never forget. It was Thursday night, July the 26th. Of 2003, I finally made my mind up and said, okay, well, let me get back. This is what happened. I had a female that used to come and we hang out and go out and get high and everything like that. And that night we had hung out and we had been hanging out all this time, and man, got up that morning, man, and we done spent all this money, and I checked my pockets. I ain't got a dime still, so I said, man, I'm done. You know what I'm saying? I said, man, I'm done. So I went to my little homeless house that I had, and in this house where I was staying at, I had a friend stayed up on like the 3rd floor, and I was able to go up there. I could shower or kick it or whatever. But this so happened this time I couldn't get in. So the 1st floor, it was vacant, but they had been working in there, right? So what I did was, like, carpet like this on the floor was rolled up in this house. So I was able to go in there, and I had running water and lights. So what I did was I took the carpet and put it up against the door to where they couldn't, so where if somebody came in, they would have to bump the door. That would wake me up to give me time to go out the window. So the carpet was rolled up, so I slept between two big rolls of carpet that night. Like that, and I had told myself I was done getting high, I was done drinking, I was going to see what was going on with the ministry. And so when Richard came to the park that day, he's like, Keith, are you ready? I was like, yeah, I'm ready. You know what I'm saying? So we went to church that night, and Pastor preached, and Pastor gave his testimony and how all the stuff that he had done and how he finally gave his life to Christ in jail and stuff like that. And I was like, well, it's something about this guy, And so Pastor gave his testimony, and at the end he was like, well, are you, he says, anybody here, they want to give their life to Christ? And I stood up, I'm like, here I am. So I went up and prayed the prayer for him, and right then and there, when I got through, he said, I'm taking you back to California with me. You're on blackout right then and there. And I left everything. I left my kids, my mom, or my mom was in Mississippi, my dad and everybody, but I wasn't doing anything useful for him anyway. You know what I'm saying? I was just an existence, just hanging out, you know what I'm saying? Didn't have no care about nothing, just about an everyday run, getting high, drinking, you know what I'm saying, like that. So Pastor brought me and 8 other brothers from California. From Illinois to California. And the blessing part about it was that I had prayed a prayer about a week or 2 before this. I had prayed a prayer, and in part of this prayer, I had told God, I said, God, I've done a lot of things, you know what I'm saying? I've seen a lot of things, you know what I'm saying? And I grew up in the church. I said, but God, if you will take me out of Aurora and don't send me back to Mississippi, I'll and use me, I'll work for you. I'll run for you, like that. And sure enough, it was like a week or 2 later, this ministry shows up and I confess, and next thing I know, I'm in California. And when I get out here, I'm thinking, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm going to California, never been out here. I'm looking at palm trees and stuff like that. But it wasn't really like that, you know what I'm saying? So when we got to Oroville, and I'm looking at everything. And the thing about that, my jobs that I would just hold a job long enough to get a paycheck. Once I got my check, I could go get me my little stuff that I needed, try to flip it and run this and that. But in the process of that, showing you how God was working, was that 2 weeks prior to me being out here, I got a job, and on that job, I stayed on that job for 2.5 years straight. Never, you know what I'm saying, like that. And it was all because of me surrendering and giving my life to Christ in this ministry, Jordan Crossing.
That's great. So what would you have to say about Pastor Mike, briefly? If you just sum it up in a minute.
If I could, that'll be hard. Pastor. He's anointed. He's a mighty man of God. He loves the ministry. He loves helping other brothers and sisters that either been where he's been or going where he's been. And Pastor, I love Pastor. Me and him don't see eye to eye a lot of times. Me and him bumped heads a lot of times. You know what I'm saying? We bumped heads a lot of times. But I'm glad that we did bump heads because it made me a little bit better, And I still sometimes, I don't agree with it sometimes like that, but that's my spiritual father. You know what I'm saying? And I love them to death. You know, the matter of fact, you know, I had went to I was doing good, got out and think I didn't need God and didn't need the ministry, and I left, started doing my own little thing, and I went to prison in March of 20th, 2008. I went to prison, and I got out, and when I got out, I called Pastor them up. You know, I called Pastor them up and told them that I was out, and I had you know, was wanted to come and I could go take passes. So I started taking passes, you know, to come back to the ministry, and I would visit with him and stuff like that, you know. And Pastor opened his arms up to me, you know, he really did. So with Pastor and Pastor Michael T. and Pastor Spears, you know, it's just they're mighty men of God. They're blessings, you know what I'm saying. Their hearts are they're godly men, and their hearts are to help other brothers to get to know God and to get them where they are. You know what I'm saying? It's just following God, following Christ.
Yeah, excellent.
I want to talk about one other thing, if it's okay.
Sure.
About 5 years ago, I was asked to go to Mississippi. They were having a trial for a Klansman, this guy, Ray Killen. Ray Killen is the one that was arrested for killing those 3 civil rights workers back in the 60s, and they finally, 40 years later, got him, taken him to trial. This lady from a ministry that I'm involved in asked me, says, "You got authority in this area, will you go with me?" So I'm on the plane, and I'm thinking, God, why do you want me to go to Mississippi? I'm busy enough as it is. What am I doing in Mississippi? The steps of rights are ordered by the Lord. I'm going. I'm on the plane. Now, when I'm on the plane, I'm wondering, Lord, why am I going? And God reminded me of my hate for blacks. How much I hated black people. How much hate I was. But I see that all got washed away when I got saved. I forgot about it, you know, like it was never there. But I'm sitting on the plane, and I started thinking about all the times that I don't want to just stab one black dude. I want to kill the whole race. I want to kill them all. So I've devised plans and made up plans how to, you know, terrorist things, how to take them all out. And I go, oh, God, I didn't realize I had so much hate in me. I didn't realize, you know, how ugly I was. And I was crying on the plane and just weeping. Got to Mississippi. The pastors picked us up. And there's Klan everywhere, Ku Klux Klan everywhere for this trial. So the next day they took us out to where they killed them kids in Mississippi on this dirt road. We're standing there, it's raining. They showed us where the bodies were laying, where they killed them. They didn't, not where they found the body, but where they killed them. And God told me, get on your face and repent for your racism right now. I got on my face and I got in that dirt, in that Mississippi mud, brother. I put my face in that mud and I cried out to God, and I repented for my racism. I repented for, not that I wasn't saved, not that that hadn't already been dealt with, but God wanted me to deal with it, you know, right there at that spot. And so I repented, and when I did, I could feel in the spiritual realm the heavens crack open and God just started pouring into me. So I knew He was doing something special. Well, then I try to lead this guy to the Lord. I keep trying to get next to this Klansman that's doing murder. I feel God wants me to lead him to the Lord. I think that's the mission God had me on. I called his house, prayed with his wife, called his house, prayed with his daughter, called his house, but I couldn't get next to him. I tried. And every time I tried to get next to him, you know, they jacked me. You know, the FBI was there, and all these people, you know, and being an ex-convict, you know, I wasn't just going to run up on this thing. So what happened was I met a pastor named Thomas Jenkins out of Jackson, Mississippi, and he asked me to come to his church. He said, will you come to my church tomorrow? And I said, sure. So they took me over there. Now, this is the thing. I went into his church, New Dimensions in Jackson, Mississippi. I went in and I went in the back. They're having a little spread back there, and there's like 50, 60 pastors back. They're all black, 2 white guys. The rest were all black, older men, older pastors, been pastor 40 years, 50 years. And they asked me, they said, why did you come here? What are you doing here? I said, I came here just like I'm doing now. I want to repent for every white person, every white man in America that was a racist, that did the things that were done, not only to the black people, but to the Indian people and the Mexican people and the Irish people and all the people, because we did it because we didn't know any better. We did it before we knew. Just like when Christ was hanging on that cross, bro. When Jesus was hanging on that cross, He said, Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they do. If they hadn't known what they were doing, they would have never done it. If I'd have known when I was stabbing people and shooting people what I was doing, I'd have never done it. See, and I told those guys, I said, look, the Ku Klux Klan back here is a big thing to you. I said, where I live, they suck air because we say so. Where I grew up, the Ku Klux Klan, we don't let people wear dresses around us and masks. I said, they're a bunch of girls. Where I grew up, I said, they wouldn't suck air unless they paid rent to us. They'd have to pay rent to be where we're at. I said, but I came here to tell you that I am sorry, and that I want to stand in the gap for every man that did this without knowing better. And the Lord broke out in that place, bro. And this one pastor, I'll never forget as long as I live, this one pastor, he's about 80 years old, black man in the corner, rocking on his feet. Rocking. He said, oh God, oh God, oh God. I've waited 40 years for this. He was marching with Martin Luther King Jr. Most of these guys were doing the peace marches with Martin Luther King Jr. And this dude come up and hugged me and kissed me and he says, I've waited 40 years for this. I can go home now. And it reminded me of the prophet that waited for Christ's circumcision. And when he saw Christ coming to be circumcised, he said, I've waited, Lord, I can go home now. So God's doing something in our nation. God's doing something in this world. God's doing something in the kingdom. And I want to be part of it. And if that means helping you, if that means helping Bill Glass, if that means helping the guys in prison, if that means helping the guys on the street, whatever it is, we got to get the Father back to the nation. Now I'm blessed. I was a disaster. I met the Master. Now I'm a pastor. I was a mess. Now I'm a message. I was a fool. Now I'm a tool. I got a wife, 3 wonderful sons. You can get, you can get in touch with me, and anything I can do to serve the living God, I'm there.
Yeah, deep stuff.
You thought that was deep? Yeah. I mean, that's some serious belief system change, ain't it?
Yeah.
That's a serious value system change right there.
Especially, he kind of just barely mentioned it. I guess that last time he went to prison, when he changed, he had to do 7 years.
Yeah.
And he just mentioned that real quick. When the 7 years was over, but so he was in the prison for 7 years.
Well, he said I was like San Quentin, and he said, he was telling me, he said that even the guys from the Aryan Brotherhood would come up to him and say, man, you should lock it up. We're supposed to take you out.
Yeah.
And he'd just go out anyway. And like you said, he said, I was scared, I ain't gonna lie. Right? But his belief system was that God was gonna protect him.
And you made it 7 years.
Made it 7 years. And not only that, I mean, like you said, we see that he went out to Chicago, into gang-infested area in the suburbs of Chicago. And that takes a serious belief system to bring back, some African-American young men back to your program.
Yeah. What's that program called?
What is it? Jordan's Crossing.
So what, you started your own program and everything?
Yeah, it's a multicultural drug treatment program. And real powerful program. Real good program.
Is he a pastor now?
Yeah, he's a pastor. Yeah, he runs the program.
He runs a long way.
Yeah, he runs that program. And he'll tell you even to this day, he says, my name's still in the hat. But I've trusted God. You know what that means, I'm still on the hit list.
Yeah, I still want you, bro.
Yeah, he still wants me. He's had people come out there.
Well, that's the guy
But for some reason, he said, I just get supernaturally protected. They just coming out there to maybe deal with them or had a beef with them, but then they just, for whatever reason, nothing happens. But we know what the reason is, God protects them.
Yeah.
But we see that, we look at the REACT module, how he reacted after his belief system was changed. And like I said, for him, it came from the biblical values. But initially it came from the gang values, right? He liked, what did he say? He said when he was a significant change in his life was, remember, he got arrested when he was a kid. And then he came back to school the next day.
Everybody started positive and saying,
yes,
good job and good job.
And he liked the way that felt.
Yeah.
What do you say? I like the attention. Right? And what did that do? That shifted the whole paradigm of his mind.
Everybody paid attention to him because probably before nobody paid attention to him. Now
there it is.
Everybody, he felt like somebody.
There it is.
And not just it went somewhere else.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, like you said, he finally now getting this attention. Now he was once, he said, but you heard early on, he said, as a young kid, he felt he was going to be a preacher. He said people were laying hands on him when he was at this Christian camp. But then he said a couple years later, he's about to go to church, and then he's in this store, and somehow he ends up in this car with some teenage boys, and then this whole event happens. That one situation,
messed everything up.
Yeah, negative association brings along similarities, right? And from there, that turned the whole course of his life.
360.
Exactly. Just from that point. And then from there, like I said, he got caught up into the jail culture, the prison culture. So he went to YA and everything else like that. Then joined that prison gang. And when you join a prison gang, you really get indoctrinated into there, right? Because what happens is you get. I mean, this is your protection. These are your peers. You're hanging around them constantly, 24/7.
And you got to do everything they say.
Exactly.
You get eliminated.
And what did he say? He says, I thought I was becoming my own person. You think, but you don't become your own person, because what happens?
You're losing your identity.
He said you lose your identity.
You're a puppet.
Yeah, you're a puppet. So he says, Ray, I was really a coward. I would have stabbed you just to let you know I wasn't a coward. Right?
Basically, to stay alive, man.
Yeah. But I thought that was interesting. He says you think as a group, your belief system.
Yeah.
And then you keep capturing time. Why? Because we're going to hit this guy. You're not thinking. See, individually, people thinking I need to go home to my family, right? Pursue my goals. But when you join a gang,
everybody got that same
or
mindset.
organization, because some people, I'm not in a gang, I'm in an organization, whatever.
Right, where the head people are serving life.
Yeah,
They don't want
exactly.
you to leave.
Yeah, exactly. And now you're thinking like a group. You make everything's the executive decision.
I've heard of numerous stories about people that were close to going home and were asked to do something and had to lock it up or whatever because they were going to go jeopardize their freedom.
Oh, I've had so many caseloads like that. I mean, guys that had a whole nice layout for them when they got out. I'm talking jobs, school, beautiful fiancés, and everything else like that. Yeah, right. And this guy, and I come back from my weekend, and I find out him and his other guy stabbed some guys up in the mechanic shop. I mean, just brutally stabbed these individuals. And this guy never even got in any trouble really when he was locked up. He was at a pretty violent institution, but real calm, very polite individual. And I would go to lockup, and I'm looking at him. I'm like, I didn't know what to say. I'm like, what? I mean, I got all this paperwork, all this interaction over the phone. And he just looks at me. And it's like he was a soldier. He's like, he got his assignment.
Like a robot.
And he carried it out. And he just like, no emotions, like. I said, were you told to do this? He just wouldn't say anything. Like, he's a perfect soldier.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Not answering anything, just like. And I'm like, man, this guy with all this potential, brilliant guy too, man. I mean, he wrote like calligraphy, just perfect. And I mean, just everything. You go into his room, everything's just organized, very studious. This guy could probably have been a CEO of a company.
Yeah.
How long did they give him for stabbing a dude?
Oh, you know what? I don't even know. I know they shipped him off, and I know he's gonna get some serious time because that guy almost died in the mechanic shop. Yeah, because he stabbed that guy brutally, unprovoked. Him and another guy. They stabbed two guys, and it's just I didn't even want to know, man. I was like, I was just like, wow. But like I said, I knew he didn't want to do it. I could just sense that because he was so excited. He had the family support. This guy had great family support, everything.
How much more longer do you think he went home?
Huh?
How much more longer?
Oh, he was just about to leave in maybe a couple months or so. Oh, yeah. And we're getting him ready for his board. I was his counselor, getting ready for his board and everything. And
dropped out,
we're having these long counseling sessions, and I'm getting him. We're ready to go, right? We're ready to go. I'm excited for him. And I come back on a weekend, and man, I couldn't believe it. They have the name tag turned sideways. I'm like,
what does that mean?
A lot of times he ends in lockup. And sometimes, okay, got in a fight or something. No, he stabbed this guy something serious. Collapsed this guy's lung, everything,
You never saw him again, huh?
Huh?
You never saw him again.
After that, I visited him on lockup, and then after that, I'd have to go see him on lockup. I'd have to go see him on lockup. But I was just thinking, this guy was under group thinking. He was captive under group thinking. He was a prisoner of group thinking.
A pawn.
Yeah, like I said, involved in this prison gang. So this is what he had to do. And now, like I said, he was with the 18 to 25-year-olds. And a lot of times we get the hits. They call the hits from San Quentin and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these guys would go out. It was kind of interesting how they did it, because these guys would stab somebody, they go to Folsom, they go to San Quentin, and for some reason, when they got done with their time there, they would send them back. If there was more time, they would send them back to the younger institution, 18-25-year-old. Like, why are you sending these guys back from Folsom, back from San Quentin? He's about 22. He's about 22.
So basically, they send them, then bring them back.
Well, a lot of times they still have time left. But see, what would happen is these guys go to the more sophisticated prisons, then they come back, and what they would say, oh, it's better over there. You get more of this, you get more of that.
Right.
So now these guys are more pumped up. Well, shoot, I'm going to go I want to go now. Plus they get their stripes. More stripes, because they want to put in their stripes, of course, at the the younger. Well, yeah, that was like gladiator school, so they were trying to stab each other to get their stripes.
So once you get up there, you'll be feared a little bit.
Exactly. So that's why that's why a lot of that's probably why there's a lot of stabbing going on.
That's why YA is so bad, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because they're trying to get ready, like you said, for college.
That's like trying to get to the
well, that's like AA. It's kind of like junior college. Now they're trying to get to the university, right?
Right.
So that's what it was. But they're working hard to get to the university, so they don't have to work that hard when they get there.
Yeah.
You see? So that's what would happen. But, so I thought that was interesting. But like you said, once he was able to, it's kind of interesting also. He said when he was locked up and he had got that time, he's seen an 18-year-old kid that was acting like he used to act. And in his head, remember, he said, is that how I act? I'm 39 years old. Is that how I act? He recognized that's how I act. Yeah. See, he's looking at the big picture. He's like,
the mindset still
that's how a lot of criminals are. It's like big kids, man.
So he said the light came on, and then right then that made a dramatic change, right? Yeah, right. So, I mean, he said a lot of good different points, and like you said, then even when he got out, he said he was flying to Mississippi. And he said he was playing back all the hatred, see, the old belief systems he had towards blacks. He said, man, I didn't know I had so much hatred. Right? But he was willing to deal with that. And he said, even though I hadn't really dealt with it, I still started seeing some stuff still circulating, right? So, he went out there and confessed it. And he said right when he did that, he just felt a huge relief. And that's one thing that I think that really has to be done for all of us to make progress is honesty with ourselves. And he was willing to go through that process. And you see, when he's able to take individuals back from Chicago, was a Gangster Disciples back.
Yeah, that's one of them.
That's a very dangerous gang out there. But that shows evidence, fruits of true transformation.
It saves some people's lives, though.
There it is.
That's the good thing about it.
Right. Trying to make, showing remorse, retribution, for what he's done in the past. And then also, what did he say? That helped his confidence. He said, you know what? Christ liked criminals. Right? He said there was a crook on the cross. Right? I mean, he wasn't just fine people doing stuff, but he says, you know what? Man, if God showed mercy and grace towards these criminals, man, that made him feel better. Right? He says, wow. He said, and I looked even at the disciples. A lot of them were caught up in stuff and things like that, So it kind of gave him a kind of a healthy, built his self-esteem up.
Especially like in the New Testament, Paul and James, everybody's writing from prison.
Writing from prison. There you go. Right. That's right. Yeah. But see how he looked at that different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a friend of mine, and I have his video too. Levon Davis. Yeah, that's fine. I'm about to play the other one in a second though. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we'll turn it off in a second. My other friend, Levon Davis, and he's from South Central LA, and his family was part of the BGF and things like that. And he said at 14 years old, 15, he said he killed 2 people in a drug deal gone bad. And he said that really like I said, he said he had got saved when he came to the youth authority at O.H. Close School out in Stockton. And that's a whole story in itself. But he said the biggest issue I had was I can't be forgiven. I killed 2 people. And he says they're trying to tell me, he says, I'm thinking my life is doomed, I'm going to hell. And so think about it, when you really feel like you're going to hell,
Nothing to lose.
yeah, it's like you first of all, you're going to be thank you. Nothing to live for. You feel depressed. I mean, it changes your whole perspective. I mean, your whole mindset. That's why they say that.
That's a violence is person.
Yeah.
That's a violent person.
Right.
When you don't have nothing to live for.
Thank you.
And you feel like you're going to hell, so you don't got nothing.
You ain't got no hope.
Yeah.
Well, that's why they
you don't
say.
want to be around that person.
Well, that's why they say hands down, faith-based programs are the most effective programs. That's hands down. That's statistics, right? Because think about it. You can think, man, I'm a dirt bag. I'm going to hell. I've done all this wrong stuff. Okay, whoopee, I get off drugs. I still done all this other garbage, and I'm going to hell. So what happens? It lasts for a while. Then you start thinking about that more. Then you get. But see, with the cross, right? I've been forgiven.
Faith-based in forgiveness.
There it is. There's that faith-based forgiveness. I've been forgiven. We've all done. Hey, the Bible says all of us have sinned and have fell short, right? So, I mean, that really changes somebody's perspective and their hope about life. That's why they call it the good news. Grace, right? And mercy. Because you still have people that they've changed their life around, but they're still caught up with all the wrong they've done. They don't understand that, hey, you could be forgiven for that, right? So if you're carrying around all that guilt, even though you change your life, pretty soon that guilt's going to creep back up on you, right? It's going to depress people. But if you can say no, see, in Christ, they say I'm a new creature in Christ. I'm just talking about belief systems. I'm a new creature in Christ. The old things have passed away. So God said, I'm not even judging you off that old man. You're a new man. That's why it's called amazing grace. So that right there, you see people come up with a new, man, I'm born again. That's what born again means, right? So now it's like, goodness, all this stuff in the past, he says he's removing it as far as the east is from the west.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
This is something now. This is my perspective of
Right.
like believing in God. I believe in God, but I like my family and everything. My family, everybody go to church, but sometimes, from my perspective, I don't want to go to church until I believe in God, but I don't want to go to church until I fully get rid of all the old things I used to do. And I'm done with everything I used to do and everything like that, but I want to fully live my life good. I am so far, but I'm saying I still got some stuff I got to work on.
And that shows integrity, but the truth is, none of us can do it. That's why it says you got to cast all your cares upon Him, because like I said, that's why God says come as you are, because you can't do it on your own. It's impossible. You see what I'm saying? Because we're born with that sinful nature. That's why you got to die to it and take on the Christ nature, because that's why He says, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Because we can't do it on our own. Now it shows integrity that you want to do that, but God said, hey, you're no match for these demonic forces on your own. You're not going to get you're not going to get cleaned up when you're dealing with demons that have been around 2,000 years, and these are supernatural beings messing with your mind, your emotion, your will. They'll spin you up. They'll make you feel like you're getting ahead, and they'll just come back and press on you. That's why He says, come as you are. Because He says, I'm accept you as that's what, the prodigal son story, right? I'm accept you as you are. Doesn't matter how you are. Let me clean you up. Because we can't be cleaned up on our own. Because He said our works are like, our righteous works are like filthy rags. Because they won't qualify us. None of us qualify. You understand? None of us qualify. Okay. So, but that's, but like I said, these things shape people's belief systems. For the good and for the bad. You got somebody with a satanic, and we deal with that daily. I mean, you got a lot of people. Satanism is growing like crazy. And Luciferianism is growing like crazy. And these are dangerous mindsets when you sit down and talk to these kids.
You know that star you said? It's like, it was a star, it was like a regular star, but it had a circle around it.
Yeah.
And then it had some numbers around it.
Yeah.
my cousin, he got that star on the shoulder. And when you remember you saying it, I forgot.
Yeah, the circle is to conjure the demons up. See, the pentagram, the 5 points, right? I mean, this goes all the way back to Kabbalah.
They got the triangles, how you said it was shaped and everything like that. And I asked him about it, and he said it used to be in it, but if you got it on your arm, so do you think you still believe in it?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times with these things, we deal with this. Like I was at the jail this week, 8th floor, Sac County Jail, and these are guys that dealing with a lot of stuff. And man, I'm telling you, these individuals that have those type of occultic tattoos, you was like, I'm talking as a chaplain now, and my goodness, I mean, one door after another, and they were calling me, pray for me, and they were feeling things coming out of them, meth addicts, stuff was coming out of them, and I mean, these guys were crying, things were happening, God was really moving, and then one guy, even in his tattoos, started feeling things move. They were saying, I'm feeling things moving in my tattoos.
Whoa.
And then we call them out, and those things would come out of them, right? And then, man, these guys are all depressed. All of a sudden, they feel so. I said, "How do you feel it?" One after another, I feel happy. I don't know. I feel like things lifted off me. This is when I was just going to cell door after cell door, and but man, I'm telling you, these were individuals that were broken. They wanted, and these are hardcore dudes. A lot of them doing life and things like that. And this is where they put like the guys that are causing the trouble, on the 8th floor at the county jail in downtown Sacramento. And I mean, these were guys, Hispanic, white, black. I mean, but a lot of them hearing voices. But when we started praying, and I'm just talking, when I started praying for them regarding that tattoo. And I would command them, and I'm talking as a chaplain, I say, in Jesus' name, or in Yeshua's name, which is Jesus, manifest. They will literally sometimes feel heat, and they feel things moving around. And then I call them out. A lot of times the voices stop in their head, or the depression lifts. And I can't tell you how many times I've done that, even at the woman's side, the women's jail. They'll call me over there, and then through the glass. One lady had just different like Mayan tattoos and stuff, and then things will start heating up. As they get hot, and they'll feel things until things literally come out of them. And they'll tell me this. And sometimes they start coughing, sometimes they'll throw up, and things of all that sort. Now, it sounds kind of deep, but it's it's true. I do this weekly. That's what I do weekly.
Do you think you change people's lives like that?
Well, I don't. I can't change anybody's life,
no,
But it does.
From the
Spirit realm is real, man. I'm telling you. And I've had situations where I've had like a Norteño that the sheriff's actually sent me to talk to. This guy said he went to a Bible study, was talking about changing. So I went over there and I said, I hear you want to change. You want to get out of this gang. He said, well, I don't know. Still my family. So he's talking a whole different tune. And I seen this demonic tattoo he had on his arm. And I just zoomed in on that. I felt the Spirit of God told me to zoom in on that. And as he's talking, I said, you know what? I think this is a spiritual thing. He looked at me kind of strange. I said, you want to see? And I said, I think this is a spiritual thing. He just looked at me and said, can I pray for you? He just looked at me and said, yeah. And I said, in Jesus' name, I said, the spirit behind the tattoo right there, I command it to manifest right now. And he started going like this, right? And he said, I said, what? I said, and I stopped. I said, what's going on? He said, someone's grabbing my arm. Someone grabbing my arm. And I said, I command all the tattoos on him right now to manifest. Every spirit behind those tattoos manifest right now in Jesus' name. And he started feeling like, I'm about to throw up. He started feeling things moving all around him. He said, what are you feeling? And I know what they feel because I deal with this all the time. And he was feeling things moving, and I see you feeling things. He said, yeah. And I said, do you see these things are real? These are the things that's trying to take you to hell. Are you willing to let those go? I said, you got to repent, you got to surrender, or these things are going to be living with you. He said, yeah, I'm ready. And he got free, and he went and testified at the Bible study. I went there to the jail during one night. We had a whole bunch of guys. And I did just a whole kind of a corporate prayer over it. And these guys were manifesting in the crowd, literally.
Oh, that's crazy.
You see? I mean, they that's what happens. So I know we a little detoured, but I mean that's still dealing with belief systems.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
right.
wanted to hear that though. That's
Yeah, we do belief systems. And like you said, I mean, if any of you all need prayer, I pray for people, you know, and you just let me know. Like you said, even after class, you need some prayer, I'll pray. If you want to see if there's something coming against you or cursing.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, and I don't force anybody. I don't force anybody. Yeah, no. But I just pray. I say, if you want to know, we'll pray, and you will see. You know, you will see. And but sometimes when people do that, they get freed up. You know, and I don't know. I'm not in charge of that. I say, hey, I let the Lord have His way. People say, well, I can't make Him do anything. I'm just a vessel. But I don't promise people. Sometimes people get healed. We had one guy at the downtown county jail. He had a big dragon tattoo, and this is recent. Huge dragon tattoo, right? And he said he was playing cards with this Asian guy that was in witchcraft. He felt he put a spell on him, but he said he was just he said I haven't been able to sleep. I mean, he's been, you know, at the psychiatric thing and all this, and I mean, just, big dude, just going through it. And he had all these lumps on his back. Like, it was like weird, like tumor lumps on his back.
Whoa.
And I said, well, let's pray. I said, that dragon right there, I feel there's something behind that. And I started praying, and he immediately, he started snotting, coughing. I mean, we're sitting there in the chair. I'm sitting like, he's in a chair right there. I said, out. I said, out in Jesus' name, out. And people are looking like, what's going on with him? He's like, I mean, just stuff just flowing out of him. I mean, like a waterfall. Right? He's crying, all this. This is big hardcore dude. I mean, he's like, hey. I said, what's going on? I mean, he couldn't, things was coming out. And then when finally it let loose, and Jesus, you know, immediately, all the bumps disappeared.
Really?
Immediately. And what has happened was, what was associated with that was, you know, the thing that came out. Do you see what I'm saying? So I mean, that changed his belief system. So, right? Because a lot of times I say, hey, some of these things you're doing, you don't understand, you know, a lot of the consequences that could be behind something as simple as certain types of tattoos.
Yeah.
And I don't argue with people. I'm saying, do you want to see or not? In the next video excerpt, Donald Big D Garcia, a co-founder of the Mexican Mafia, talks about what helped change his belief system.
You know, what happened to me was that when I got out of Folsom in '82, my oldest daughter had a little baby boy. He was 9 months old, bro, right? And I was out for 7 months. For 7 months, that little kid was with me everywhere, bro, you know. They named him after me, Little Donald, right? Right then and then, when they named him that, I tripped out, man, because I'm a heroin addict, bro. I remember I'm all blowed out, nodding, when they baptized him, and then they started going like this. You know, that little bautismo, the fiesta they're having, they're going like this. Little D, Little Donald, Little D. And I'm like this, and see, I want to say something, but it ain't like that, bro. So I never had no biological kids. When I met my wife, she had 2 little girls, man. They're my girls. Right? And when that young lady named her baby boy after me, bro, I used to feel like a monster. I done already lost 2 ladies who committed suicide because of my lifestyle. I done already been to prison for murder twice. I used to feel like everything that I touched, I destroyed, bro. But when I heard that name, Little Donald, Little D, I went like, wow, man, you know, I'm blowed out. I'm blowed out on the heroin, the 90s, bro. But when I heard that, like, I must have made a very, very, very good impression on my oldest daughter to name her baby after me, bro. I was out for 7 months, bro. Things was happening. I went to the county jail in LA. Normally, I went to high power, bro. But, you know, I'm not trying to say bad things about guards or something, but, you know, sometimes, you know, they put me in a module 4300 Charlie Road. It's about 200, maybe 5 black brothers. I might look like a brother, might sound like a brother, but I'm not no brother, man. So it's como, So they put me in there as a trustee. Now, was I afraid? When I say that, a lot of people keep saying, "No, you weren't." I was afraid, bro. But I'm the big D, the barbarian, right? I know what the cops wanted me to do. They wanted me to go in and tell them that they made a mistake, or for me to. That was a BC move, bro. I can't do that. I'm the big D, bro. Or they wanted me to get hurt. So I got me a knife. Now I'm not afraid because I'm thinking I'll take one or two with me, bro. I don't care, you know. But see what happened now, you know. Somebody took something from me, man. You know, without, you know, I'm not trusting him holding the door. They're going to eat. When I come back to myself, somebody took something from me, man. Ain't nobody take nothing from me. All of a sudden I decided I was going to kill the leader, right? But then there was a young brother, big old brother, man. He used to go around taking advantage of the older brothers and the younger ones and hit him in the side of the head. So I decided I was going to take him out. Night before I'm going to take him out, bro, I'm in my bed, bunk like this, tripping. You know, how I'm going to do it. I've done it before, no big trip, but I'm just pumping myself up, right? I don't know where, bro. See, I'm not looking for God. I'm looking to commit bodily harm. I don't know where, boom, my grandson's face appears, bro. Oh, man, tears started coming out of my eyes, bro, because I missed him. Then it showed me that I was going to end up in death row. I could, you know, it didn't bother me. I thought I was destined to die in death row. The pen, the county, on the streets. My goal in life was to be 28 years old. That's how old my dad was when they killed him, bro. I'm already 40 years old, bro. But then it showed me that years later when little D grew up, he's going to be next door to me in death row. And tears became like Niagara Falls, bro. I started crying like a baby, bro. That's when I found myself in a situation, bro, that I wanted to kill the dude. I didn't want to kill him. I wanted to kill him. I didn't want to kill him. All of a sudden, I felt like I was going to go crazy, bro. You know, I was being tormented, you know. As a matter of fact, Satan knew me, bro, right? I want to share this because, see, when I was going through all that trip, see, I didn't know nothing about the fiery darts, bro, right? You know, so while I'm going through the trip, I want to do it, I don't do it, all of a sudden, like a thought came into my mind, like Satan knows me, bro. You know, that fiery dart, he threw a little thought in my mind, says, Atáncate, lock it up. Because I thought about it like this, bro, I'm going to kill this dude now, bro. I can't be thinking like that, bro. You know, the reason I want to share that is because a lot of people think things and they don't execute it, but they become even worse than they was because they thought it, right? But you know, I decided I was going to kill him, but then I got out of my bunk. You know how you get out of your bunk and you go like this, bro? And there was a book under my bunk. It was upside down. I pulled it out and said, it says, good news, good news, good news, good news, in little words all through the bag. When I turned it around, it said the New Testament, good news. I opened it out, and I opened it out to Luke. I don't know what chapter it was. I know what chapter it is now, man. As I started reading it, started talking about happy is the guy that's sad, the people that are hungry, they're going to be fed. But when it got to pray for your enemies, love your enemies. But there was I think it was in verse 23, it talks about treasures in heaven. And then I think in verse 34 or something, or 35, it talks about treasures. See, everything started because somebody took something from me. All of a sudden, I don't want to hurt nobody, bro. I can't put that book down. I found peace and comfort in that book, bro. And I remember going to the pen. And when I went to the pen, there were 4 dudes from my kid, man, from the gang, man. And they told me, what's up with the book, dude? Don't sweat the book, homie. I found peace and comfort in this book. And they said, what's up with the book, dude? And I said, don't sweat the book, homie. And the third time I said, check it out, bro. So a lot of vatos walking this yard ain't supposed to be walking this yard. Sweat this book, we will put in some work. All of a sudden, they zipped it, bro, because they were getting contact visit. I ended up in Soledad Central. So it's cool. I was on my way to Folsom in 85, bro. There was all out war. I already sent word to have me a fierro ready, bro. But Lord, I was already moving in my life without me realizing, bro, right?
So that was a kind of a switch to a different weapon, wasn't it?
You better believe it, bro.
Wow.
But see, I didn't know, bro. But you see, God works so good, bro. You know, mira. Everybody used to offer me a fierro, offer me a knife. That's when I met Grato from Sanjo, Grandpa from Sanjo, all them. You know, I didn't care, bro. I was wearing red, blue. I could care less, bro. Right? I don't come from that era, bro. Colors, bro. Right? And I remember that I would go and tell them little youngsters, hey, dude. See, I would find out their names. They'd be all like this. They said, Rocky. I said, check it out, man. I don't run nothing around here, bro. But if ever your leaders want you to start some kind of battle with the South Side of this thing, let me deal with your leaders one-on-one. See, the Lord was using me in a weird way, bro, right? You know. But then the verses that would come to me, like people tell me my favorite verse. How can they have a favorite verse, bro? Everything I read was favorable to me. But then I was reading Psalms 27. They quoted today. Psalms 27, see, the Lord gave me verse 4. The one thing I want from God, the one thing I seek most of all is to dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to dwell in this. You know, so every morning I used to read that every morning before my devotions. And one day I woke up and I'm paranoid, bro. When I get paranoid, I get out first, bro, right? So see, check how God works. Oh man, I can't thank God enough for when He came into my life. When I went to read my verse before I went out and get a fierro, I went to read my favorite verse. He directed me to verse 1, 2, and 3. Lord is my life and my salvation, whom shall I fear? Because the Lord is my life and my salvation, I shall fear no one. Although a host encamps around me to devour me, they will stumble and fall. I am confident that He will protect me, bro. Right then and then, you know what happened, bro? Pase lo que pase, come what may. I got a one-way ticket to heaven, bro. And mira, and from then on, everything was just. I started going to penitentiaries that a guy with my record don't go, bro. Ended up in Chino East, permanent worker. The Lord was showing me, bro.
Showing you favor, just like the.
So what stood out on that video? You know, he's talking about. Did you catch the beginning when he's talking about his grandson? Yeah. And I mean, again, this is dealing with the belief system. You know, according to prison culture, he's supposed to kill somebody, right? Like I said, if he's thinking like, you know, in that group thinking mentality, I mean, it's a no-brainer. He knows what he has to do. But like I said, there was a paradigm shift going on with his thinking. And it was relating back to his grandson.
It made him think, because if he would have, his grandson probably would have, if he would have seen something like that, or grew up and seen him being up on death row and him having the same name, he probably went down the same path.
Well, we ran out of tape, so I'm just going to kind of summarize what we just talked about concerning the Big D video. And basically what we pointed out was that Big D basically was motivated to change the negative mindset that he had for so many years based on the value that he's seen in his grandson. And sometimes that's all it takes, is for one to find that value, whether in a person, whether in a goal, whatever it may be, for them just to continue to hang on and persevere. Now for Big D, it was his grandson, because he was so honored that his stepdaughter named her son after him, that he was like, you know, man, I must have did something right for her to name him after me. And when he was talking about killing that guy, because that was prison culture, you know, somebody take something from him. Like you said, he was in there with a whole bunch of African Americans, him being a Serrano, especially in Los Angeles, I mean, they're sworn enemies. So, but because they had mistaken him, or he believes maybe he set him up, he couldn't PC up. That means he couldn't go into protective custody, because, you know, that'd be violating, you know, gang laws, right? So someone had took something from him. So at that point, when he gets disrespected, it was his belief system, according to, you know, his gang, that he had to take somebody out. So during this time, he's saying that he's warring, and he's, as he says, you know, the fiery darts from the enemy, which are the thoughts, you know, whether he's going to kill this guy or not going to kill this guy. Then he says he goes back, thinks about his grandson, where that value's at, and he visualizes grandson, and he thinks to himself, you know, like I said, it had been his goal. He's like, hey, I don't mind dying on death row, but for that moment, he thought about his grandson being in a cell right next to him on death row, and that right there motivated him to come out of that mindset. And during that time, he finds a Bible, and that Bible just helps, you know, reinforce that change, you know, about forgive your enemies. And see, that's what it took. You know, he was able to change that whole mindset, going back to that bear module. Our beliefs dictate our emotions dictate our actions dictate our results. And that's what he was able to do. And, you know, from that point on, you know, he didn't look back. And of course there was trials and tribulations. And Big D is no longer with us. He had died of cancer last year, but he went on to leave a mighty legacy for his family and his grandson. Praise God.